Hi, everybody. Welcome to Trends in Technical Communication for 2012 and beyond. My name is Sarah O'Keefe. I'm here with Char James-Tanny, and let's get this party started. We are going to talk today, everybody except for myself and Char. Hey, Char, say hi.
Hi, everybody.
There she is. Okay. So other than the two of us, everybody is muted. We will ask you to feel free to ask questions and participate in the polls and all that other stuff. To ask questions, you'll need the questions area or tab in the webcast interface, so you might want to go see if you can find that. We are recording this presentation, but attendees will not actually appear in the recording. What we've done is we've built this webcast with 3 trends from the 2 of us each, so that makes 6. We'll have a little discussion following each trend. And we're hoping that you all that are out here on this call will participate via the questions tab and also in responding to the polls that are out there. So Char, would you like to say hello and kind of introduce yourself?
I already said hello. Hello, everybody. I am Char James-Tanny. I am president of JTF Associates Incorporated up in Lynn, Massachusetts, where it's a balmy 37 degrees today. I do apologize for the tweeting birds in the background. I start talking, they start talking. We'll try and keep their annoyance level to a minimum. I have more than 30 years of experience as a technical communicator. I've worked my way through all the different help outputs. And these days I speak worldwide on help authoring concepts and tools. I'm big on accessibility, in case nobody's noticed. I cover social media, web standards, collaboration, and technology. And I have been a Microsoft MVP since 2002.
I see some names on the webcast of people that I recognize. I kind of hope that you've met Char because I sent her an email. I said, hey, Char, I need a photo. And she sent me a photo. This is what I got. Unfortunately for her, we're Facebook friends, so there's Char. And I'm pretty sure I was at this party, and I think there was booze involved. But moving right along. My name's Sarah O'Keefe. I run a company called Scriptorium Publishing. I am in Durham, North Carolina currently, and I won't tell you what the temperature is because Char's going to reach right through this pipe and kill me.
I'm north for a reason. It's okay.
Oh, okay, you like it cold. I'm interested in content strategy for technical communication, and especially in how publishing and content and technology all kind of collide and interfere with each other, and bad sort of things happen. So I decided that I, too, needed a theme graphic, but it, can't beat the pandas. Okay, so trend number 1 went to me. Well, half an hour ago it was in the other order, but we changed it. I want to talk about the structured cloud. And what I mean by this is support not just for XML specifically, which would be structure, but cloud support for specifically technical communication. So not, let's say, Google Docs, which is a lovely product and I use for various kinds of things, but is not typically appropriate for sort of big picture tech comm stuff. What I'm seeing coming as a trend is this idea that we have new cloud-based tools for XML and also for non-XML tech comm challenges. Right now, the only traditional vendor, and I did put that in quotes, but the only vendor that I'm aware of that is sort of in the help authoring tool area that's offering a cloud solution right now is AuthorIt. There may be some others out there, but that's the only one I've heard about. And the reason I think we're going to hear more about the structured cloud and where this is going to go is basically 2 issues. One is cost. It is generally cheaper to put stuff in the cloud than it is to buy servers and put stuff on servers and manage them in-house. But the other issue that our customers are running into goes beyond that. It's not so much a cost issue as it is a resource issue. They don't want to be dependent on their in-house IT groups because they have had maybe some difficulty getting resources from IT. So in other words, the ability to eliminate the dependence on an in-house corporate IT department is perhaps the most compelling argument that points to the cloud. So with that, I'll turn it over to Char for her first trend.
And my trend is that no matter what anybody comes up with as tech newcomers, we are just naturally distrustful of anything in the cloud for our content. It's great for stuff that, like Google Docs, wikis, people are using wikis, but this whole let's put all our content in the cloud and store it on somebody else's server has a tendency to make us really, really nervous. So I think we're going to see people kind of, or vendors specifically, work toward the cloud. I think there's just going to be a really long adoption cycle until people learn that if they can or cannot trust it. And of course, every time some big thing gets hacked, we immediately just go, see, this is why it won't work. Dropbox had an issue several months ago where people could get into other people's Dropboxes. There was another one about a month or so ago, and for some reason I've decided to not remember their name. But the fact is that all of a sudden it was like, oh shit, all of our stuff is now vulnerable. And a lot of us work with governments or with Fortune 500 or with just companies in general where this information must be protected, and we're just nervous. So we have polls.
So we have 2 polls and also some comments that came in. So let me open up the first poll here. What I wanted to find out is whether any of you are currently using the cloud for TechCom. So, you know, I use Google Docs for my son's soccer schedule, does not count. What we're looking for is, are you using it in your organization? Wikis count if you're using them for TechCom things. So it's a bit, you know, it's a bit of a tricky question because it's perhaps not terribly well defined, but basically, is it part of your job responsibilities? Couple of comments here. One, Char, maybe to you, what about a private or hybrid cloud to address the security concerns?
I think that if a company has its own intranet and they're running their own documentation on their own servers, yes, that I can see being adopted. I think people are doing that now. It's companies that are storing your information on their servers that you have no control over. That's where I see people being the most nervous.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I think people are nervous. The flip side of that is that in some cases you look at it and you say, you know, this is really, really compelling because we could do some really cool stuff that we absolutely cannot do in-house. It will never happen if we do it in-house, but if we put it in the cloud, we have some options. So,
well, and it's like anything else. We overcome our nerves at some point because the benefits outweigh the negatives.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
I'm going to close this poll. I've got about 82% that have voted on this, so I will go ahead and close it and show you the results, which are that's higher than I expected.
But nobody said I don't know. That's good.
That's good. We were worried about that. So, so about a quarter of you, not quite, said that yes, we are using it, and I imagine a lot of that is wikis, although I don't know for sure. There's also a comment that came in that said mega upload would be the other one to look at in terms of content just being in the cloud and then suddenly taken away, in that case, I think, by the FBI. And I heard this morning that they're actually going to wipe the servers, so that's not going to be pretty. On the other hand, I think mega upload could be fairly described as having been not exactly legal. I think everybody knew what they were for, and it wasn't Dropbox. So, all right, so the second poll we had here had to do with when are you going to move to the cloud. So one of your options here is to say never. But we did want to find out, you know, what do you think? Is this something that you're going to do? Are there people out there that haven't done it yet, but they think they might at some point? We don't really know. Let's see, a couple other comments. Several people say we're using the cloud internally, that they are doing cloud computing in-house. And there are, of course, some issues. Sometimes the cloud is taken to be synonymous with outsourcing. But in fact, what it really means is that you don't really know what the server is, that things are distributed across this lots of servers.
to answer Joseph's question, no. Cloud is anything that you have to have an internet connection to get to. I say people will feel more secure about a server that's running in the cloud that is under their own control. I think people are more nervous about using servers that are on the cloud that are based under somebody else's control. And as we just said, it doesn't mean people won't move that way eventually, but it takes time.
It usually, or it should also mean, but often it doesn't. You know, cloud is a very vague term, not unlike cloud. But it usually also means that you're not addressing a specific server. You're addressing a collection of servers, and you don't really know where your data is. There's some back end that's dealing with the question of what data center is this actually in. That's not something that you worry about in the cloud thing. So let's see. Does putting documents on public website count as cloud?
It can. If you're putting it up on a public website, that's because you want people to read it. So you're not nervous about that. This is storing your content that you're going to use eventually, like a wiki where you are not open to the public yet. You've got it in the cloud. You've got it on probably somebody else's server, and you're using it to develop content, but that content itself isn't ready. And yes, there are security features, but security features can be hacked.
Mm-hmm.
So posting them, no, that isn't really what I'm talking about. It's the development.
All right, let's take a look at the next. Oh, sorry, I need to close this poll and see what kind of results we got. So only 30% are saying, not going to happen.
None. Yes, okay, sorry. It turns out the top three are also 30%.
Right. Yep. And then there's a good 40% that are in the, I don't know, get back to you. Which, you know, could go, that's the great undecided. You know, they could go either way.
Right.
And they will determine the results. Okay, moving right along. Char, you have another trend.
I do. I don't remember which one this is. There we go. Add innovation. In case people are curious about the panda, my son is known as the hidden panda, or as he says it, the hidden panda on Xbox. So I, of course, am the panda's mother. So we have lots of panda pictures around here. Okay, hat innovation time. What has happened for the last 20-something years is we go through a cycle. Hat vendors go through an innovation cycle, then they go through basically a clone cycle, and then they go back through an innovation cycle. We are just in the beginning of an innovation cycle. We're just sort of finishing what I call a clone cycle. And a clone cycle is when other vendors look at what came out of the last innovation cycle and start implementing it. An innovation cycle is when they start creating stuff that nobody else is doing and add it to their tool. The one thing I do seriously hope is that nobody ever changes tools just because there's an innovation. You want to, again, go through your process of researching what you need your help authoring tool to do. Why are you going to use this tool? What are you getting out of your current tool? You typically are, everybody's always either satisfied or dissatisfied. I just always get a little bit nervous if people find one thing to say, oh, I've got to move tools because. You need to make sure you do more research. Anyway, as far as that goes, we're seeing innovation. Things like Help and Manual's latest version is now using the Windows Metro look. This is something new they wanted to try. Author, it just came out with Cloud, which, as Sarah said, is new. Now, Cloud itself isn't new. Several vendors have done feedback servers that are sitting up on a server so people can analyze their output and what people are looking for. But development on the cloud, this is a new thing that we're probably going to start seeing more of. Sorry, I went to look at the questions thing. I should keep staring away. Some of the things that I actually, when we were putting this together, I'm going, oh, look at this is new and this is new. And then I start doing research and I go, okay, maybe it's not quite new. It turns out a lot of the vendors now are letting you publish directly to mobile outputs. This is a good thing given how many mobile devices there are and how many people are accessing them, accessing websites and other stuff through them. And if you've ever gone to a website that wasn't optimized for mobile, you know what the problems can be with that, which is you're seeing a very small reproduction of that website, and you're trying to find it with your fingers, which suddenly seem to be so big on that screen.
It's really cute.
It is really cute, but it's not always usable. You have to keep expanding and expanding, and half the time I go to double tap to expand, and I end up hitting a link, and now I'm on a different screen, and I got to start the whole process over, and it's sticky. QR codes. Some of the vendors are now starting to let you incorporate QR codes into your output. That's going to be another one of those. I don't think everybody's going to adopt it, but I do think some people will. If you can find a good use for it, it should be there. One of the things we have noticed over the years is that if vendors are going to make announcements, they do almost always come out in roughly end of February, beginning of March, because they almost always announce them either at Writers UA or at the STC conference. And sometimes they announce some stuff at Writers UA and then other stuff at the STC conference. So this is typically when any innovations get announced, so that people are excited and they're ready to go see it at the conferences, see the demos, and see what they can learn about.
And cough up their money, right?
And cough up their money.
Okay.
Remember to use a process.
So we wanted to ask you then about this, and what do you think are the most compelling ones? We've given you 3. You could certainly feel free to choose other and then pop it into the questions area if there's some other things that people are doing that you've seen that are interesting. Meanwhile, a couple of questions here. Somebody wants to know, do you see web help migrating to the cloud or being deprecated?
Well, web help is already in the cloud. That's the whole definition. It's running off a server someplace so people can get to it from everywhere. Will it be deprecated? I don't know. One thing I have noticed is that for many years, most of the vendors used, we all had frame sets, which personally I hate. They're not very accessible. And more now are doing CSS-based web help output. Doc2Help has a website, I have it here somewhere, up off their helpcentral.component1.com URL, and this no longer uses a frame set. It's CSS-based. Author put through a new revision. I think it was with Hamish will probably know better than me. He'll remember the dates better than I will. But one of the version 5s from Author released a new web help output that, again, got away from frames and went to a CSS-based layout. So that's what I'm seeing. The only new, more modern format that I think we're going to see is true, more mobile layouts that we can choose. Does frame? Yes. It's always, typically frames, tri-panes are always done with frames, have always been done with frames. Now we're seeing them with CSS.
I'm going to go ahead and close this poll, so if you're planning to vote, grab one now. Nobody wants to pick other. That's no fun.
Really?
Really? There's one.
Thank you.
That was somebody voting other just to cheer me up. Okay, I'll give you another 5 seconds, and we'll see what people come up with. If you do choose other, feel free to type in whatever you think the answer is. I don't think there is a right or wrong answer to this one, although I venture to guess that tri-pane has some issues. So let's take a look here. That's a pretty strong vote for mobile.
Yeah, really. That's awesome.
Interesting. I think I have a whole slide about mobile later on. So, okay. So anything else you see in here?
QR codes, somebody's asking, you're better off. They're little glyphs that you scan with the camera in your cell phone, in your mobile phone. And if it's a smartphone, it automatically will go to the URL that's embedded in that glyph. And some are really complex, and some use short URLs. But this lets people get more information at other websites without having to, instead of clicking a link, you scan the QR code. You can see them. Actually, one of the funniest places I've seen them is at United Airlines terminals. I've never figured out how they expect us to scan them because they're on those little overhead TVs. that say scan our QR code to get more information about, I don't know, their frequent flyer plan or something. And by the time you see it, you have to get your phone out, you have to get it on camera, you have to get up there, and of course there are 3 ads beyond that. So, but you'll start seeing them more and more. Just be careful. Some have been getting hacked. There are bogus URLs, not bogus URLs, but they go to viruses and things. So just make sure you know who the company is who's put out the QR code that you're scanning.
Mm-hmm. And there's a comment here from somebody that says analytics and SEO tools would be an interesting trend.
Yes, very good.
Yep. Yep, I would agree with that. All right, moving right along here. The 4th trend that I picked was business focus and shameless pandering to the honey badger. What's happening here, I think, is that TechCom is going through this evolutionary process from a scale from sort of necessary evil to business asset. There's a recognition that, hey, if we do this well, it actually does something for the business, not just, oh, we had to do doc. You combine that, though, with a focus on, well, we don't really want to spend more than we have to. And that is resulting in people really being interested in better process. And I'm not talking about, reducing the quality of your content necessarily, but more like, let's not spend all our time copying and pasting. Let's not spend all our time doing reformatting to manage numbered lists that refuse to behave, those kinds of things. Get rid of that stuff so that you can focus on the stuff that's interesting and important. And there's also innovation here. There's some companies coming out with some really interesting kinds of help systems, really interesting kinds of ways of delivering support, some fun content. I saw somebody mentioned on a list I'm on, actually mentioned 37 Signals the other day as having very nice help. And there are 2 things about their help that stand out to me. One is that it's slick and it's pretty. And the other is they've made actually very heavy use of screencast videos, which I normally hate. But in their case, they keep them to 60 to 90 seconds, and they do actually answer the question that I'm looking for pretty much every time. So they've done a really, really good job there of producing really great content that, I appreciate. But what I'm seeing as a trend more and more is companies that are saying, okay, we actually want to look at TechCom from a business point of view. So the equivalent to this would be if you have a QA department, you would have metrics and you would measure QA's contribution to the product, not just, oh, we're supposed to have QA. So that's kind of one of the trends that I'm seeing this year, and I'm actually very curious to find out whether this is something that you're seeing either in your organization or in your industry, in general. Are you seeing an increased focus on TechCom delivering business value to the organization? And I think it's probably worthwhile pointing out that it's to the organization and not to your customers necessarily. That's something different. So, and this one's popping right along. So we'll give you a few seconds to do that. And let me take a quick look here at the questions and see what's coming in. Yeah, so there's a comment here from somebody saying, we've been telling our managers to support us, meaning the doc team, and we will increase the revenue. And, if you can make that argument and prove it, they'll give you all sorts of money. So somebody else asked about examples of innovative solutions. Somebody mentioned single sourcing. I would say, Susan, that much of the innovation that we're seeing revolves around first cleaning up the processes and then taking the time that you gain from doing that and doing cool stuff. That's really not the most specific answer I've ever given in my life. But Char, do you have any examples of this?
No, but the funny thing is I was just you're going to see more in the next couple of months. I don't know what you're going to see. The vendors are very closed at this time usually because they're putting the finishing touches on their new stuff and what they've got coming out. And I'm not sure which part you want to steal shamelessly because any of this can be adopted. We won't say steal. We'll say adopted, because in many ways, sometimes they're techniques, and sometimes they're just the way the output's being published. But look at variety. Just keep looking at different websites. Look at different help outputs. Go to big, especially commercial sites, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, eBay, and look at what they're doing and decide what you like and you don't like, and steal what you do like.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see what we have here. So something like 2/3 of you say yes, this is something that you're seeing, which means 1/3 or so are saying either no or I'm not sure and I don't know. Okay, so Char, moving along here, what have you got? You have trend number 5.
My turtle.
Your
Slow adoption of standards. I have been fighting for standards since 1994. The good news is the vendors are now doing stuff like this. Section 508 compliant output, WCAG compliant output is now being listed as a look what we do. It's been over 20 years. You're still going to see sessions on standards, different ones, accessibility, web-based standards, HTML, CSS, how about just CSS, structured authoring, etc. You get sessions on them. You go to conferences and you learn about them. But I'm still not seeing the big adoption of them. I just got a job in this week, which is we ran analytic reports on what's wrong with the accessibility of our documents. And one of the things is headings. And you know, the message comes up and says headings 1 through heading 6 should be used in the correct order. And most of their pages only have 2 headings on them, and those would be headings 3 and 4. So they're recognizing something is wrong, but they're not. This should be something that I would think is fairly easy to implement. Like you start with 1. You don't start with 3. I think it's just going to take more time until more people just automatically go, we can't do that because it violates this or that standard.
Yeah, and I think I would add to that, and this is not true for accessibility, but certainly for structured authoring, it's quite expensive to implement it, and until it gets cheaper, it won't be universal. It is unclear to me what people's excuse is regarding accessibility, because that is, in fact, not that expensive. So let's take a look at that poll and see how many of you are out there saying, yes, this is something that I deal with.
And it's okay to say no or I don't know. It is.
But you will be depressed.
I'll be much happier if more people say yes than no or I don't know. But I don't expect it at this point.
So it looks like 70%, 80% voted. All right, I will close this and let you take a look. So almost 40% said yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's actually very good, I think. I laugh because when Sarah and I were doing the dry run yesterday, the common joke is, well, I don't have to worry about accessibility because I don't have any blind users. And Sarah replied, it's because nobody can read your stuff. Accessibility is much more than just for the blind. There's numerous levels that we try to accommodate. And basically the whole idea is just making it so that nobody is omitted. Everybody can get to the information they need. I've been watching TED videos by Amy Mullen, who is an actress and an accessibility advocate. And she is a bilateral amputee. She had both legs amputated below her knee. And her definition of disability is someone without hope. And I thought that was just an awesome explanation, because so many times when people talk about disability, it's, oh, well, they can't see, they can't hear, they have some kind of cognitive issues, they have emotional issues, they have physical issues of other kinds, there's temporary issues. You know, when my son decided to twist and fall and screw up his ankle last year and was in a soft cast for 6 weeks. That really kind of throws off his life, given the fact that he's a swimmer. And it throws off our lives because you have an active kid who's not allowed to get off the couch. That just is like really hard. Watching somebody with a broken arm, especially if it's their dominant hand, now can't use their mouse, or people who, because of arthritis, can't use the mouse at all and rely on keystrokes to get around. There's all sorts of things that an accessibility strategy can help with, and we just need people to start thinking about it more.
Yeah, and I would add to that, you know, we talk about blindness, but something that's much more common than being blind is being colorblind. And so, you know, at a very basic level, producing content that has contrast that is usable for people who are colorblind, which is a sort of a very hidden disability in the sense that you can't look at somebody and say, oh, he's colorblind.
Right.
If you produce graphics that are not readable because the red and the green are used to convey meaning, and so somebody who's red-green colorblind can't see the difference between the two, you know, there are a lot of people out there that are colorblind in one way or another. So I think it goes a lot beyond the obvious, the disability with a capital D.
My husband, actually the term they use is color deficient, because they're not actually colorblind. They can see colors, and they can actually identify colors, which tends to freak people out who aren't aware of this. He is now an election junkie, politics junkie, which means we have a lot of different shows on. And if you watch any of these shows, they put up graphs, and the lines they put on are red and blue. He can see the lines. He can't tell you which one is red and which one is blue.
Yeah.
All right. So, and especially when they say stuff like, the dark line. Okay. They both look dark gray right now. Which ones might that be? So there's just lots of thinking. But yes, just color contrast alone would help with so many issues for many people, not just those who are color deficient.
It's some huge percentage of men that have color issues, right? I don't remember what the exact number is.
It's between 10 and 14%. There are 6 different kinds of color deficiency. Only one is true monochromism, and that's 0.00001%, who can literally only see black and white.
Right, but 10 to 15% is.
It's a pretty decent number.
Big number.
Higher in men than women.
Yeah. Okay, the last one that I wanted to talk about before we let our audience jump in and cause trouble is, in fact, the rapid shift to mobile in TechComm. So I picked an obviously clearly TechComm-related image here. We are seeing an awful lot of interest in HTML5, which provides a foundation for delivery of mobile content and potentially of sort of universal content that could go onto mobile devices or onto desktop browser big screen. And this is where we have a lot of people asking about this. A year ago we had basically nobody asking about it, and now we have a lot of people asking about it. And this is really kind of problematic for what I would describe as a dedicated help system, because if you think about that teeny tiny screen on your smartphone, or if you have one of those newer, there's the Nexus one that's a pretty big screen, but still, the small screens on the smartphones, you can't possibly cram a tri-pane help system on there. So you have to look at this question of how am I going to deliver help, and I can't have a tri-pane because it's just unreasonable, so you have to do it some other way. And then there's a larger problem, which is that on a desktop machine, we're accustomed to this idea that you have the software running over here on the left, and the help may be running over here on the right. And we don't have that kind of screen real estate anymore, which means anytime you click help, you can't have a system necessarily that takes over the screen, because they would read it and then they're lost. They have to go back to the interface. I think this means that we're going to have to do a lot more embedded help and get a lot more of the help information onto the actual interface, as opposed to having it off in its separate self-contained thing. Now, the reason we do separate self-contained things is partly because we can, but also I think in part because it's much easier to do a self-contained system and ship that as a side load to the application. You don't have to work with the application developers so closely if you're delivering a help system that just has a few hooks. If you look at embedded help, where the help text would actually appear, let's say it says name and there's a little field, and then when you start typing in that field underneath it, it might say something like, oh, apostrophes are not allowed in this field, my personal favorite. It turns out about 50% of the time apostrophes are not allowed, but nobody ever tells me that until I get some weird SQL error, which I have learned to interpret as, please don't use apostrophes. It never says that. It says, you know, database field expected end of line, blah, blah, something. But what they actually mean is, please go back and take out the apostrophe. So we're going to need a new way of delivering help for mobile devices. We will have, I think, ways of delivering help systems for people that want to kind of read, maybe a quick reference guide. We were talking the other day about the idea that you might want something like a DITA quick reference on your phone that you could just look at. But in general, if you're using an app on your phone, where is that help going to go? And how are you going to deliver that? And how are you going to integrate it with the other stuff, with the actual application? So, but this is happening, and it's happening fast. So then I wanted to ask you the companion question, which is this something that you are worried about at this point? Are you paying attention to HTML5? Is it something that you think you're going to have to do? And, you know, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, HTML5 is the successor to, unsurprisingly, HTML4, and has, you know, really extended the HTML spec and put in a bunch of stuff that formerly we had to do with lots and lots of JavaScript. And Char, you're probably a much better person to explain that than I am. But, you know, it's coming.
It is coming. The problem that I see is that for so many years, people use tables for layout, and HTML5 doesn't want that. And they use, people would not take full advantage of CSS to position content on the screen, and HTML kind of requires that. The new semantic tags, the only way they're going to show up where you want them to show up is if you use CSS to tell them where to show up. And lots of people just miss that whole chunk. So I'm still seeing a lot of overrides and things like that in HTML files. So it's sort of a double learning curve for anybody who wants to move to HTML5, because not only do you have to learn the new semantic tags, you actually have to know more about, I would say, XHTML than HTML4, because you can still use all of them together with HTML5. And you really need to know different pieces from CSS.
So here are the results. This looks like actually a pretty even split between yes and no, and a small fraction over in I'm not sure. I would really, if you're not familiar with HTML5 and you need to learn more, we've got actually a webcast with Peter Lubbers coming up in about 2 weeks, so you might want to take a look at that. I think this is something that people will have to learn. I think it'll become as much just a given that it's something that you need to know as generic HTML is now. So I would keep an eye on that. All right. So what we wanted to do then, we've got a good bit of time. We've got about 20 minutes. And what we want to do is go ahead and open this up and let you all throw out your questions and your comments and your trends. What sort of things do you see coming?
You actually have a question, Sarah, on any good examples of mobile help that we can view? Do you have any good examples?
I do not. Do you?
I do not.
No, I see it as a big problem, but I don't have any. Oh, and there's also a question here. This is an interesting question about convergence between TechCom and books. How do you see this conversion? Oh, sorry, convergence. Char, you want to talk about that a little?
I think you're probably going to start, especially as the e-readers and the tablets that allow e-readers gain momentum. I think you're going to see more TechCom outputs being pushed out to ebooks. They're actually kind of nice. I've actually done stuff in ebook format. What's nice about them is you got full text search, you've got full navigation, may or may not have an index. but it's a standalone one. In fact, Help and Manual has actually been publishing to ebook format for several years now, quite a long time. I think you're going to start seeing more of it, but I think it's also going to depend. You know, the whole thing in TechCom is know your audience. If your audience is using iPads and using other different kinds of tablets, I'm not going to try and get through all the names, or even smartphones that can read ebooks, and they say to you, this is what we need, then you're going to look into what you can do to publish it. I don't necessarily know that somebody might try it just for the heck of it. I just don't know how much of a selling factor it'll have, that whole business proposition thing, if nobody's actually asking for it first. On the other hand, it doesn't hurt to be prepared. Say, yes, we can do this. Here's a sample in case anybody's looking.
There's some interesting issues around ebooks. So in terms of convergence, I'm not sure I see convergence simply because ebook is just another format. We've been delivering to lots of different kinds of formats, and ebooks at the end of the day are HTML with a wrapper, some more proprietary than others, and that's not that hard to do. It's not that hard to deliver ebook format. The thing that kind of bothers me about ebooks is that I actually see them in some ways as a step backwards, because if you're already delivering your content, let's see, as HTML on a website, and you're doing some interesting things with it, then parceling it back into an ebook where you're limited to what the ebook reader will support feels a little funny. We're actually getting lots of questions about this. So there's a question here about iBook Author and KF8. I would refer you on that to two posts that we put up on our website in the past month. I wrote a post about iBook Author and why it's problematic, and Alan Pringle wrote a post on KF8, which is the Kindle Fire newest format, and why it is problematic. But my advice, if you're looking at those formats, is try not to get locked in. Try to keep your content in something that you then convert into whatever delivery format. You don't want to be developing in a proprietary format and then be stuck not able to get to the others. There's some more, but Char, did you have anything you wanted to throw in about ebooks?
No, not right now. That was something
okay. What do we need to consider when developing ebooks that is different than developing books for other formats? Well, they are digital, so that means that, for example, at least in theory, color is free and video is free. Now, developing video is pretty much the opposite of free. And then you're going to run into, again, into this problem that, for example, something that you can do in an EPUB might or might not be compatible with what you can do on a Kindle. So there's some really, there's just some real concerns there around how are you going to do this. My advice is build it somewhere else and convert it programmatically to get to where you're going. I think you can do some cool stuff with ebooks.
The other thing you have to worry about, though, is that each of these different readers has its own advantages and disadvantages, what it can do and what it can't do. So you need to make sure that whatever you push out is as universal as possible. Because otherwise you're going to be stuck having to do, this is our iPad format, doesn't use Flash. This is our Android format. It can use Flash most of the time, but sometimes it can't. You may have to start getting into HTML5 videos that use the whole progression sequence. Try this, 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 and then if nothing else works, go to that. So, but that's the one thing you got to watch out for with ebooks. You have to know they're all publishing types are different, and you've got to know what they can and can't do.
Okay, great for reference information, says somebody, which I would agree with that. There's a question, will they, and I think this means ebooks, affect TechCom, or is that a separate business like textbook publishing? We are seeing demand already from our TechCom clients for ebook formats. They want Kindle, they want EPUB, they want iBooks because that's what their customers, their consumers want. To give you just one example of where this is attractive, this is the infamous you're under the sea, you're on an airplane, or you're in a mine, and if you have very complicated mining equipment, you're really better off with a tablet that contains all your reference documentation on all these different machines and all the maintenance stuff that you need. Now, it may be a hardened tablet of some sort, not an off-the-shelf kind of thing, but that's a good example where the tablet makes a big difference because getting the stuff down off the internet is not really an option when you're a mile deep underground and you don't have Wi-Fi.
Right.
So there's some stuff going on there.
Eddie makes a good point. Ebook formats do not support XREF back navigation. So you're in an ebook, you tap a link, and great, you get the explanation on the link, but now you got to try and get back to wherever the hell you were, and there's no easy way to do that. But Denise, you do not want to provide just text because that is you lose all the capabilities that ebooks give you at that point because text is plain.
And I would point out, I don't disagree that the lack of cross-reference back navigation is a problem, but I don't agree with your conclusion, which is until this is rectified, ebooks will not support full-use tech docs, because I think that the end user will say they'll never notice. They'll take it and they'll be happy because it's on their tablet. Somebody pointed out that my mining example is the anti-cloud. So
there you go.
All right. I think I kicked off all the ebook stuff. Yeah.
I don't agree. I think users will notice. I think it's going to be up to us to come up with ways of creating links that make it easier to get back. Of course, it depends on how many times you use that link in something. But you're going to have to come up with different ways of doing links so that people can get back to where they were, or to make it at least easier for them to get back to the section that they came out of. I do think users will notice. He wrote that, and I immediately went, oh, my God, he's right. Because I've run into it numerous times. I do a lot of stuff in ebook format, cookbooks typically.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll agree to disagree on that one. I think they'll notice and then they'll just move on. I don't think it'll fail because of that.
No, I don't think it'll fail, but I do see it as being a.
Okay, so some other trends here, because we had a lot of comments about ebooks. So I would say based on the questions and the comments we're getting, clearly people are concerned about ebooks. I would definitely take that away from this. A comment here about just-in-time help, context-sensitive help that also includes show-me videos. So that would be a trend, and also interactive versions and the idea of gamification, which is like the worst word ever invented, but I know what it means, becoming popular. What do you think, Char?
I would have thought we would have been seeing more of the designing for interactivity by now, to tell you the truth. And the show me videos, I mean, those were huge when, oh crap, Help 2, when Microsoft first started talking about Help 2 back in 2004. It was big on the show me videos. But I'm not seeing as many of them as I would have expected almost 10 years later. I really would have thought there would have been more by now. It's just not really being done to the level I thought it would be done, at least not in the stuff I do.
And somebody else mentioned designing for interactivity. What I would say to these is that interactivity and also video and various other bells and whistles add cost. I believe that what we're going to see first, or I think what we're going to see for the most part, is quick and dirty and cheap. Because when you look at the fiction market, where people are selling books for 99 cents or $2.99 or whatever, very, very cheap compared to the traditional print book. Now the publishers are trying to hold the line on that and keep it at $10.99 or $12.99, and people are thumbing their noses at them and saying, I'm not paying that for a copy on my Kindle because it is obviously not as expensive as the paperback. Now, we can get into the whole argument over whether that's true or not, but my point is that I think that digital books will first trend towards the fastest, cheapest way to do them, and not the shiny bells and whistles. There are going to be bells and whistles eventually, but not first and not primarily, because the value isn't there for most tech comm publishers. Okay, let's see. Somebody mentions cross-functional tech docs that can be used by marketing and sales. That's a really interesting point, and that came up in the content strategy session I did 2 weeks ago, that there may be a convergence between tech comm and marcom. So something to think about there. I've also got some data questions that I'm kind of pulling those together. Somebody mentioned TechComm as graphic novel and comic book. I think that has the same issues as the high-end interactivity. It's, it's expensive to do. And Char, feel free to jump in here.
For TechComm as graphic novel, Mike talked to Alan Porter, who's big on this.
Mm-hmm. There's a note here from somebody who says we're preparing videos for the end users, which require the creation of fictional environments, quite challenging, but makes the documentation, not only videos, attractive for users. That's interesting.
Yeah. Actually, I've got over, sounds like so many and it sounds like so few at the same time. On my Nook, I have over 300 books, and I do buy a lot of cookbooks now. I buy them on the Nook. It's much easier for me to read the recipes. And I still get excited when a cookbook includes videos. I'm like, still,
oh, yeah.
It's sort of funny. It's like, oh, yes, thank you. You're showing me how to do this. So it's not actually a totally fictional environment because it's a cookbook and they're actually doing the same thing. But I can see how it would definitely make the doc set much more attractive for users because it's easier to get your questions answered, especially when you can see somebody doing the steps you need to do.
There's a question here about platforms needed to generate content for a tablet, for tablet end users. Is FrameMaker okay, or do you suggest something else? I suggest that you figure out what outputs you need to deliver and then reverse engineer your way into what are the appropriate tools for that. FrameMaker has the ability to generate EPUB, both I think natively and also through the TechComm suite via RoboHelp or via something like WebWorks Publisher or Mist2Go. And without knowing exactly what your requirements are, there's no way of saying whether that's appropriate for what you're trying to do or not. And also there's the burning question of unstructured or structured FrameMaker. As a general rule, if you have a lot of content and some localization and a lot of formats, most of our customers in those scenarios are moving towards XML. But I think Char has a different market perspective.
I do. Yeah. It's not a bad market perspective. It's just different.
So in your case, if somebody asked you that same question, I think you'd give maybe a different answer.
Actually, it wouldn't have been that far off than yours because I don't know about the reverse engineering part, but if they're already using FrameMaker, I would tell them to look at the same 3 tools you did, and that gets them the output they want.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I have a question here involving AuthorIt. You're definitely getting that one. Do you see more data automation like AuthorIt's implementation of structured authoring taking place, or a move away from reliance on any one vendor for the implementation of DITA-like capabilities?
I don't think I'm actually aware of anybody else who offers DITA-like capability other than AuthorIt. I know of Conversion. Flare now will take DITA files and push them through so you don't have to use the toolkit. I'm also not completely sold that DITA is the answer to all our problems, although I think it's the right answer in circumstances where people have figured out that this is what they do need to do. I guess part of the problem is I'm not sure if this is more a question about DITA or structured authoring.
Or AuthorIt. Yeah,
or
maybe if that person could clarify.
Oh, thank you, Anne. PTC's Arbortext is DITA compliant.
Yeah, and there are others, but this issue of DITA-like capabilities, structured authoring has been basically conflated, let's say, with XML, and they are not the same thing. Structured authoring is the ability to define a structure for your documents and enforce it programmatically in the software.
Correct.
That's what AuthorIt has put in. The other application that does this is actually FrameMaker. Structured FrameMaker can do structured authoring minus XML. That is one of your choices. Not a lot of people are doing it that way, but it is out there.
Right.
So
and one of the other things I've noticed too is that the concept behind DITA that seem to make it so favorable, maybe this is why I have problems with this whole, I'm not too sure how much the adoption is going to need to take place or whatever, is like the different topic types. We were doing those back in HTML Help in 1997. So
right. Well, they came out of information mapping in 1960.
Whatever, yeah, someplace a long time ago. So again, it's just more of, is it just the paradigm you need, or do you really need data? And if you need data, do you need straight data, as in with XML editors and the toolkit and that whole thing, or do you need sorry, my words are starting to escape.
Yeah, but I think we know what you mean. You know, do you need the
light.
whole thing, or can you do like a light?
Right.
And you know, again, this is like my answer to everything these days. You have to figure out your business case. If you don't have a business case for DITA, you shouldn't do it. It's expensive to implement. It's a huge pain, and it's, you know, it's painful for everybody involved. That said, we have customers that are going through that pain and paying a lot of money because it makes sense for them, because they have compelling business advantages to be gained. If AuthorIt can give you compelling business advantages for what you're trying to do, then you should use that, and that's the same for, you know, any other tool. But the question first needs to be, what are your business requirements? What do you need to do in TechComm to deliver the highest value, you know, highest return kind of content? I think that's the question. Then, yeah, okay, so the follow-up here is, we just want to get away from having to deal with XML.
And in that case, AuthorIt will do what you need.
In that case, AuthorIt will do what you need. I would ask the question of whether your business case is stay away from XML, or this is a I don't like the technology question. And
nothing like giving you all easy answers, right? We'll just keep answering.
Oh, absolutely. The answer to everything is it depends.
It depends.
Somebody else is asking about current trend toward DITA adoption, more users, more or less adoption, or more users or fewer users. You know, I don't know. All I can tell you is that we're extremely busy, and most of the people that come to us are moving towards XML and DITA. That's what we're seeing. That doesn't mean that's the market.
No,
that's
because
our
we
market.
have our niche, and so therefore we're going to see what we focus on.
So Michael Harvey, hi Mike. Michael points out that machine translation of TechComm is a trend, which then leads to global English standards, and has the follow-up question, actually, will TechComm eventually be authored by robots? Reasonable question. I think I'll let it sit there, and we can all think about that one. My overlords have told me not to respond. Okay, dynamic content delivery. Do you think dynamic content delivery, content tailored to individual users constructed on the fly, will catch on? I have an opinion. What do you think, Char?
I think they've been trying to do this for like a whole bunch of years.
Yeah. I think you have to have a compelling business case to do it. That's my answer. Today's answer to everything. Is there a trend towards getting more customer feedback and letting them customize docs? This is something that people ask us about, and then when they find out how expensive it will be, they have a fit. So what were you saying? Sorry.
Oh, well, the funny thing was I was saying the same thing. I'm seeing the trend toward the questions of people asking this. I haven't quite seen it implemented, although I was telling Sarah yesterday that, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago, my thought was whichever vendor came out with a way to push stuff out to a wiki and let users comment and then bring it back in so that users' comments could be conditionally accepted, edited, approved, disproved, whatever, would probably have a huge leg up on the rest of the market, and nobody's really done it. But I always thought that, especially wikis, you know, were so hot about 6 years ago, that it looked like, you know, a lot of stuff was going to head that way. And there's always this discussion on should we let users customize our docs, and of course that's the same nervousness factor of should we put all our content in the cloud for development. Sometimes you have really good users who really know your stuff better than you do, and the edits they make would be substantial and would really improve your doc set. And other times we have users that think they know your tool better than you do, but they don't. So there's that fine line of how do you decide if users should be able to do the stuff or not. But no tool has made it easy to do that. There's still a lot of manual labor involved. I worked with a client in Dallas, Houston, somewhere in Texas, and they were actually doing that, pushing their stuff out. They let it go to a wiki, and then, but when comments came in, they would approve or deny them, and if they were approved, they would incorporate those comments in their docs, and they'd push it back out to the wiki again.
Yeah, it's a hard problem. Okay, so I think we're out of time, so I will wrap this up with a link to our webcast location. If you were signed up, you should get an email with a link to the recording, which should be available, soon. Take a look at Scriptorium.com events for upcoming events, especially including that HTML5 session. And there is our contact information. And with that, I will say thank you for coming. Thank you, Char. It was fun, as always.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody who attended. This was fun.
So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.